All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Green Camp's Groundwork Certification webinar. This morning, we'll be talking about the certification process for camps to pursue a Green Camp certification by completing 5 simple steps to build a framework for sustainable development. Today's presenters will be myself. My name is Danny Studman. I'm the Executive Director and founder of Green Camps Initiative, as well as Christy Andrews from Camp Wawanock. And Christy will be presenting steps 1 and 2 that she's completed from her camp, the process going through there. So go ahead and move forward here. So I'd like to start by talking about just a little bit of background and understanding why I feel that sustainability has such a strong place in the camp community. When we look at sustainability, my background working at Catalina Island Camps and the Catalina Environmental Leadership Program, we use sustainability as really the core principles for how we taught our lessons. Dr. Richard Murphy from Ocean Future Society came up with the 4 principles of sustainability, which showed that everything runs on energy, nature recycles everything, biodiversity is good, and everything is connected. And so you can look at these 4 pictures within the slide here and see that in nature, we can see where these 4 principles function. Now, the key to this in the education realm, or specifically in the camp realm, is how can we draw these connections? And so my favorite picture here with the sea cucumber pooping out after it's eaten the detritus that's fallen to the sea floor is it's taking a wasted resource and recycling it. And so where might we see that in the camp community? Maybe it's through our composting efforts to take and recycle that. Maybe we have worm composting and so on and so forth. So we can really draw these connections from nature and understand how nature is able to utilize these principles and draw that connection back into our camp community. So where do we start? How do we do that? Well, that's where I came up with the idea for the Green Camp certification and the larger accreditation program. I saw that there wasn't really a single model of sustainability that's going to fit the diverse need of each camp. Instead, camps can use the resources and support of GCI to implement systems that work for their unique program. And so with the accreditation model, which is what we started with for Green Camps Initiative, I took the benchmarking tool, created benchmarking tools for best practices in sustainability, and laid those out along areas of energy, water, food systems, landscaping, and other areas of sustainable development within the camp community. Now, there was still a pretty high area to reach, to really reach for an accreditation. So with the help of Maine summer camps, I got the idea to break it down a little bit more simply into these 5 steps. So that we can really build a framework of sustainable development that meets the needs of each camp and then allows us to then pursue those higher level accreditation standards. So those 5 steps include creating a green team, creating conservation policies, completing some audit surveys to ask some really important questions, implementing one initiative, and submitting a case study on that initiative. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring Christy Andrews in. And she's going to speak to her experience on completing steps 1 and 2. Right. So Christy, are you here with us?
I hope everyone can hear me and see me. So like Danny said, I'm Christy Andrews. I'm from Camp Wawanock. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience with steps 1 and 2 and a little bit about step 3 of the groundwork certification. So the first part of what the groundwork certification asks you to do is to create a sustainability commitment, a statement to sustainability. And the biggest thing that I would say I got out of doing this is it created, accountability for our camp, accountability to make sure that we manage our resources and try to continually improve our reduction of wasteful practices. And so I think this is really important because it makes sure that sustainability is not going to slip through the cracks at your camp, and it's not something that's going to be forgotten. And then more generally, I think it gives you a responsibility to uphold that commitment, not just to ourselves, but to our camp family and to the greater camp community. So having something written down that outlines your camp's commitment to sustainability is a really great place to start. And then that goes into step 1, where in the groundwork certification, you create a green team. And for me, this was important because it clarifies everyone's roles. Everyone at camp starting with the leadership, your directors, your executive directors, then your staff, your support staff, and your campers. Everyone knows what's expected of them and what their responsibilities are in terms of your camp's commitment to sustainability. And it also gives the green team leader, whoever that may be, security in knowing that their position is valued and sustainability is important to your camp. And then further, it ensures camper involvement. Part of creating Green Team is outlining how you want your campers to be involved in that. And I think that that's a really important part of sustainability education. And so it ensures that that's going to be a focus in the summer to help build education and awareness to sustainability. And then further, it supports your counselors who are going to be working with campers, because if you have something written down about the Green Team, they're going to know where they lie in that whole thing. So that's step one. Step two is creating a conservation policy. So using the Green Camps Initiative framework, it's an incredible basis. I really only needed to fine tune the policy that is outlined in the groundwork certification and put in details that are specific to Wawanock, or removing things that didn't have to do with that, aren't applicable to Wawanock. So for example, in energy, it talks about air conditioning, and we don't have air conditioning in any of our buildings, so I could remove that entire section. Another important part of creating the conservation policy is that it's now available for staff to read. And I also ended up creating, a one-page summarized version of the policy to put in our staff handbook, so it's a little bit more digestible. But again, that helps build legitimacy of what you're trying to do at your camp for sustainability. And it legitimizes what we're already doing, but it also creates a space for conversation about possible, improvements, or for staff to bring forward ideas of what they see you could do more of, because there's always room to get better. And then one thing I will say about step two, creating a conservation policy, is that it's not overwhelming, because it's not asking you to talk about everything. It's focusing in the groundwork certification on water, waste, and energy conservation. So it's a really great place to start, but it's not, this big, oh my gosh, I have to write a policy on everything to do with sustainability. It's a small portion of what you could be doing. So it's a great place to start. And so then I guess overall, my main reflections of the whole thing would be just that it's a very accessible entry point. It's a building block. The groundwork certification is a building block for your future work in sustainability. It's not a big time commitment. It took me maybe at most for one step 40 minutes. So it's something that's very doable, and in a it's a non-threatening way to start thinking about sustainability a little bit more. And then it also gave me insight into what we do well and what we can continue to improve, especially step three, the audit survey, which I've only just started and I'm still working on, but it really is helping me figure out what areas we can continue to improve on. And then because of that, knowing where I need to go next, I think Danny will talk about this a little bit more, but I know where I need to go next, and being a member of GCI, they'll have resources to help me get there. So if you have any questions, write them in the chat. And then I know Danny emailed my documents to you, so you can definitely look at them. And if you have any questions, then maybe email Danny and he can forward along my email. But overall, I would say that my work so far with the groundwork certification has been incredibly simple and a great place to start thinking about sustainability. So Danny, I think I'll pass it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy. Again, I appreciate you taking part in this and sharing your insights. It's nice to hear from someone else's experiences on how they're perceiving this. So I do want to reflect a little bit on what Christy talked about, and understanding that really the intent behind this certification and what Green Camps Initiative is doing in general is that we want to create unique policies across across each camp. And again, going back to that statement that there is not one model for sustainability that's going to work for every camp. And so the idea of having a template for the green team and having a template for conservation policy is for you to tear it apart and to say, this isn't going to work for us, or this is a good idea, this will work for us, and to restructure the entire thing to make it unique to you. I'm really excited to see what people come up with, especially working with the green team. One of the things that I really want to emphasize is the importance of including campers in the green team, and that's going to look very unique for every single camp. And I'm excited to see what camps come up with, and maybe we can share these ideas and help grow these green teams and grow these conservation policies so that the camp community can benefit from this. So Christy did a great job speaking to, excuse me, steps 1 and 2. I want to expand a little bit on step 3. So step 3 is the audit survey. And so one of my favorite quotes that I took from my previous director, Travis Langen, is a good question can be more valuable than a good answer. And so the idea behind this is that when I'm teaching a group of youth or a group of adults for that matter, I find it so much more powerful to be able to ask them a question that's really going to provoke those critical thinking skills and really make them ponder these ideas. And even, the answer that they come up with isn't as important as the process through what's happening in their mind when they're thinking about these questions. And that's the idea behind the audit survey questions. I want you all to answer these questions and to think about it and say, when we're putting in site data, when we're putting in data about our energy consumption or our water consumption or our office consumption, we can really get a sense of what areas are going to benefit from that. And so under the so what marker there, we can establish a baseline so we can see what are our general kind of behaviors as they stand as far in concerns to our energy and water consumption. We can track our progress. So as we move forward and implement sustainable initiatives, we can watch our savings. And so being able to track our energy monitoring, for example, as we input new light bulbs, we can watch the change in that happen. And so tracking that progress is really important to show the benefit of what we're doing here. Economic savings, of course, being able to look at where we can save money, environmental savings and how we're going to benefit the environment. The data to support proposals, I think, are very important so that when we bring these proposals to implement sustainable development, it's really important to have some data and information to back up your proposal when you bring that to a board of directors or to whoever is going to be the one to sign off on that. Also, grant opportunities. Anyone in the nonprofit sector who has applied for a grant, you realize that they want a lot of data and understanding of, how can you define the need for this grant proposal, and what data, what information are you going to be able to use to display your findings and make sure that your outcomes are in line with what you proposed there. And so there are a lot of great grant opportunities. I took a week-long grant writing course from the Grantsmanship Center and really excited to pursue some of these opportunities here. And then also to look at what the environmental needs of the entire camp community are. And so by understanding a segment of what the camp community is interested in for sustainable development, it'll allow Green Camps Initiative to continue to grow and develop in the spirit of the rest of the camp community to provide those type resources for y'all. So step 4 is implement an initiative, and this is really where the accreditation program really comes together as we move forward and out of the certification. That I see each initiative as a standard. And so the 16 that are written here in front of you are 16 that I chose that I feel are pretty widely accessible across any type of camp community. And what really ties all camps together in my mind is that you have to have an office to really function. And so even if you're a trip and travel program, if you're a day camp, any type of unique type camp programming, there's typically going to be an office structure. And so if you at least have the office structure to implement these ideas, that's a great starting place. But we can also see where they would expand beyond into larger day and resident type programs as well. And so with each of these initiatives, on the Green Camps website, Green Camps members will have access to resources that will support you in implementing these initiatives. And so anything as simple as changing the computer energy settings, all the way up to putting smart watering controls or laundry to landscape systems, I feel pretty confident that each camp will be able to find at least one of these initiatives, and maybe more throughout this process, that you can implement as a way to begin testing these things and see how it's the response you get from the camp community. So among those camp resources are reduced cost products that GCI has partnered with organizations that produce sustainable goods and services. And this is in line with our mission as a 501c3 to provide camps with access to resources to access the benefits of sustainable development. So reduced cost products, also visual aids and videos and lesson plans, case studies, articles, do-it-yourself guides, statistics and savings calculators, and this is continually growing. These resources will continue to grow, and as well, when you submit the case study, you're going to continue providing more information, and we'll be able to grow out those resources. And so the case study is what really ties this together. The case study asks a series of questions to get an overview of what initiative you implemented, what resources you used to implement it, the challenges that you face through the process, as well as value that it adds to your camp, and then just an overview of what it took to implement that initiative. Now, the outcomes of these case studies are threefold. There's three things that I think we benefit by submitting these case studies. One, it's going to highlight your initiative. It's going to highlight the initiative that your camp took on. And so in the Green Camp's website, when you submit your case study, it automatically links to your profile. And so we can look at each camp's profile and look which case studies have been submitted, so we can understand which initiatives have been implemented by the camps. Now, this also creates a searchable database. And so if I'm looking for a camp in Maine, for example, that composts, I can look through all the case studies of Maine camps that have submitted composting initiatives, and I can learn from what these camps have already done. Now, this database will continue to grow as more initiatives are submitted, more case studies are submitted, but it will grow to be a really valuable resource where we can learn from the successes and challenges and possibly failures that other camps have gone through in submitting and implementing these initiatives. But rather than start from scratch and reinvent the wheel every time, we have this resource to benefit us. And then finally, the third aspect is to receive credit from GCI. And so by submitting the case study and putting pictures in and other information about how you went through to implement the initiative, GCI will have all the data right there in front of it. And so we can gather all your data, and we can then give you the credit for the certification without actually having to come out to site. The process for accreditation further down the line is still being developed, but will be reflective of this process as well. So finally, I'd like to go ahead and wrap up, and we'll start to move into a Q&A session. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and start sending those into the text box. I think is the best opportunity. But what I'd like to share are some resources. And so, you know, if this is your first time hearing about Green Camp's initiative, or maybe you are aware of Green Camp's initiative and you might be ready to become involved, I want to give out a couple options on how you can support the continued development of Green Camp's initiative. The first and most straightforward is to join as a Green Camps member. In order to gain access to all the resources and the booklet and all in order to pursue that certification, you will need to join as a Green Camps member, and that annual fee is $350 a year to access those resources, reduce cost products to support you in implementing these initiatives, and many other resources that you'll see listed in the bottom right there under Green Camp's membership benefits. I'm also happy to connect with you and tell you more about this, and specifically how it can benefit your unique camp. The other thing I'd like to recommend is to subscribe to the Green Camp's newsletter. This is a free service, and I send out newsletters periodically with updates to the development of Green Camp's initiative, as well as free resources and outreach opportunities and volunteer opportunities within the Sustainable Camps movement there. You can also follow us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, and then, of course, email, check out the website, and give us a call. And the other thing I'd like to say is donate. If you have an opportunity, if you're not ready to make that commitment for that annual membership, please do send a donation to Green Campus Initiatives in order to continue moving forward with this movement. I hope you can see that the framework that has been put into place is really going to benefit the camp community in so many different ways. Those three outcomes that I typically describe are the environmental, we're going to reduce the environmental impact of the camp community. The educational, we're going to use sustainable systems at camps to teach the thousands and thousands of visitors that go through each camp facility. And then finally, there's a lot of economic potential gain for this. When we reduce our energy and water consumption, we're going to save a lot of money here. So please do make a donation to Green Campus Initiative. You can find the link right there on the homepage of the GCI website. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions from the audience. And I appreciate everyone's attendance today, for listening. Please feel free to reach out and ask questions. We are looking for volunteers if you're interested in the volunteer opportunity. And we're also growing the board of directors for Green Campus Initiative and have a really exciting model in place for that. Following this webinar, you'll receive an email with some links to this information, some action-based information there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop with that and open it up to question and answer. If you don't have any, then again, thank you very much for your participation and attending today. All right, well, it seems like that'll do it for the day. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye-bye now.